Welcome to the Healthy Compulsive Project podcast, where you can take a deep dive to explore the pitfalls and potential of the obsessive-compulsive personality, offering hope and help for perfectionists, workaholics, micromanagers, type A personality, and control freaks. Hello everyone, Gary Trosclair here, psychotherapist, Jungian psychoanalyst, and author of the Healthy Compulsive Project book, blog, and podcast. Lists are the go-to strategy for many people who are obsessive-compulsive, driven, and type A. Depending on whether they are using those lists mindfully or mechanically, they can either bring harmony to a busy life or tyrannize someone who is already under the gun all the time. Used mindfully, they can help make us sure that all the different parts of ourselves get included in our day-to-day lives. Used mechanically, they just reinforce the tyranny of unrealistic demands and expectations. I'll be suggesting some very specific ways to make sure that your list work for your well-being rather than against it. This is episode 78 of the Healthy Compulsive Project podcast, How to Harness the Power of Lists for Your Well-Being. Some of us live by our lists. We do whatever they tell us to do. Others dig their heels in and rebel against whatever chores have been assigned there. But who makes the list? Whoever does determines the power of lists to make our lives miserable or fulfilling. If the inner tyrant makes a list on its own, the projects will feel like drudgery, and there could be rebellion. But if the list is consciously curated, if it's collaboratively compiled by diverse parts of the personality, it can be effective on many levels. And this isn't just practical. It's a reckoning with what you say is important to you. Lynette's list. The power of lists was made clear to me recently when a client whom I'll call Lynette found a way to make her list work for her rather than against her. She was a communications specialist for a nonprofit, and while she believed in her work, it did get redundant at times, and there was no end to how much work she could do for the organization. Determined to use her compulsive superpowers to shake things up, Lynette made it a point to put things on her list that she really wanted to do, but rarely allowed herself to do. For instance, listen to music while taking a long walk. Call 3 people about that community project she wanted to get started. Call Uncle Timmy, who's going through a rough time. Play Ken, and take a nap. She usually didn't do these things because her tyrant controlled her list. It said things like leisure, play, and meaning were frivolous and unproductive. Besides, if the list wasn't focused on chores and work, the urgent stuff, she'd never get them done. But despite discomfort, she let other parts of herself weigh in on what was really important to her and carried on with her new list. She had a much better week. She got the dull chores done along with the more enjoyable and meaningful pursuits that usually didn't make it onto her list. It was subtle, but she had a feeling of support from these other parts of herself that helped her to make good on her shift. The effectiveness of inner cooperation. How did she get time to do it all? She was actually more productive because the parts that were usually excluded did not go on strike. It wasn't as if she always did exactly what her tyrannical list told her to do anyway. Most weeks she would alternately comply and rebel against it, which was not efficient. Parts of her resented the oppressive list and did their best to keep her from working on it by going on strike. At times like this, she'd rearrange her closet and drawers and scour the internet for deals on a washer and drying machine combo, which, even with the best of deals, was not yet in her budget. Typically, her tyrant would threaten her with shame and embarrassment if she didn't get everything on her list done, and she would dutifully get back to work and scratch off a few items. But even aside from gaining back the time she usually wasted in rebellion, she was refreshed and more effective for the stuff that was usually a drag to do. Think of your mind as a government. Is that government autocratic, just one set of values dominating all others? Or is it democratic, with all the different parts of the personality working together to choose agendas that satisfy them all? Your list shows what kind of government you voted for inside. The myth of the unitary personality. We like to think that we are each a single unitary organism, but too often we find ourselves at odds with ourselves. We talk to ourselves without acknowledging the split that dialogue reveals. Who is talking to whom? One of the simplest and clearest maps of these parts acknowledges the parent parts, that's the shoulds, the child part, that has to do with needs and wants, and the adult part, which reasonably seeks a balance. Compulsives tend to identify with the parental voice and they neglect the child. Children are not allowed a place at the table when lists are compiled. Compulsives often deceive themselves into thinking that the adult is running the show when really the parent has become tyrannical. These concepts are gaining more scientific support in a general way via the research on the significant impact of the unconscious and, more specifically, regarding the effectiveness of parts work in psychotherapy. Acknowledging the different sides of yourself can have great benefit. Trying to deny them will make a mess of your life. Tyrannical and harmonious list. Which brings me back to the power of lists. When you make your list, what goes on it reveals which of these parts are included in your life. If the list includes only the shoulds, clearly the tyrannical parent is in control. If you can put a more balanced agenda on your list, you are operating more democratically and including both child and adult. Does the list include play, leisure, things that you want to do but aren't productive, or things that have meaning but don't pay the rent? As I explore in my book, The Healthy Compulsive, that focus on work backfires. Rest actually helps us to be more productive. Individuation and harmony. 20th century psychiatrist Carl Jung brought to our attention the deep need to individuate, that is, to become one or to become whole. He mapped out different parts of the psyche that can sometimes be at odds and encouraged us to get them to work in harmony. This could mean that your inner hero and your inner beach bum need to talk it out. You might feel that it's heroic to skip vacation so you can finish that project and make sure it gets finished as well as it should be. But as I've pointed out in a previous post, that would be compulsively heroic rather than heroically compulsive. Putting both the hero and the beach bum on your agenda moves you toward being individuated and whole. Imagine the hero and the beach bum together, arms around shoulders, singing in harmony, different but together. The power of lists. When I write on my list, lie in hammock, and listen to music, they're much more likely to happen. The list gives them status and respect. I freely admit that this is a bit of an end around, or maybe even a self-manipulation. But I know this about myself, and I do it consciously. The gratification of crossing it off the list encourages me to do it. It also justifies doing things that I might bypass for months, or even years, if I didn't consciously make it part of my agenda. I like the idea of doing things out of intrinsic motivation, but sometimes we need a little help getting over the hump. 6 list categories: productivity, sustaining, meaning, play, pleasure, and leisure. When we make a more balanced list, there is less chance that it will cause the kind of feet-dragging rebellion that robs us of gratification. Here are 6 broad, overlapping categories that you may want to experiment with in your lists. 1. Productivity. Create that new spreadsheet your boss has been asking you for. 2. Sustaining. Call the insurance company, do the laundry, go to the gym. 3. Meaning. Call Aunt Mildred or volunteer. 4. Play. Video games, solitaire, spelling bee, volleyball, trivial pursuit, foosball. 5. Pleasure. Listen to your favorite playlist. Go to the gym. 6. Leisure. Take a hot bath or a nap. You might notice that categories 3 through 6 are the kinds of things that Lynette put on her list that made such a difference. We all tend to list 1 and 2 automatically, productivity and sustaining, but tend to neglect the other categories and other aspects of ourselves. So the list ends up affirming tyranny and creating resistance rather than eliciting cooperation and harmony. Agenda and values. This is not just about getting things done or time management. It's an expression of your values, your agenda for life. Does your list match your values? That word agenda has at least two meanings. It can mean a list of things to cover in a meeting, but it also means a list of priorities, the things that are most important to us that hopefully get expressed in our lives. But too often the urgent overrides the important. So if you'll excuse me, I have an important date with my hammock. You can find transcripts of this podcast with links to research sources and lots more at the Healthy Compulsive blog, www.thehealthycompulsive.com. If you'd like to subscribe to the Healthy Compulsive podcast, hit that subscribe button. And for a thorough guide to cultivating the positive potential of the compulsive personality, find my book on Amazon, The Healthy Compulsive, Healing Obsessive-Compulsive Personality Disorder and Taking the Wheel of the Driven Personality. And if you find any of these helpful, let others know by leaving a review. Till next time, enjoy the drive.